Hello everyone, I am here with Frank West of City of Games, the publishing company that really is Frank West, I think that's fair to say, a true indie publisher. Thank you so much for being here.
Cool, no, it's absolutely great to be here, thank you.
We're going to look at City of Kings.
Yep.
So this is your most recent game. I got to tell you, we're walking through the GAMA exhibit hall, and of everything that I passed by, this was the one that I thought was most intriguing, especially just the graphic design on the box. It really was eye-catching. So that's how all of this started is, well, let's take a look at this thing and also talk about, you know, you've been through Kickstarter, you've done this all on your own, and seemingly done it well.
Well, thank you.
And you want to continue doing it. So I'd also like to discuss a little bit of that throughout this video.
Yep.
So the first thing I really want to get into is tell me about how all of this came to be. Right?
Yeah, so for me, I've always liked games. You know, from a child, I've been a gamer. I had every console that came out, and for me, it was always video games, you know, digital games.
Yeah, of course.
And as I got older, I wanted to make a video game. I spent so much time doing that, playing around, coding things, and I just never had this team I needed to make what I wanted to do. And over the years, I got more familiar with board games, and I started to realize that maybe that game I wanted to make as a video game could be a board game.
Yeah.
And then I kind of was like, well, let's do that. So at first I was kind of like, let's get some paper, let's start doing it. And I had a vision of what I wanted it to be, which was this big open world adventure game. And we just started working on it. So my girlfriend and I spent many nights sat in our bed playing prototypes of board games.
So great. So how long did the whole process take you?
So from the start of kind of that moment to when the printed copies arrived with people was about 4 years.
Wow.
So a long period of time.
So is this the kind of thing where, and I know that a lot of people say not to do this, we were just talking about this earlier, did you just kind of say, I'm going to pitch this idea to Kickstarter, see what happens, and go from there? Was that how the vibe was?
So I always knew Kickstarter was the way I was going to do this because I've got big visions for the City of Kings universe. I want to create many games within the same universe. And because of that kind of IP complication, working with other publishers felt like it was going to be very complicated. Yeah. So we said, let's do a Kickstarter. So I did the not so wise thing, which was when I got ready to do my Kickstarter, I was like, this is what I want to do. I believe in it and I need to dedicate myself to it. So a few weeks before we launched the Kickstarter, I quit my job. I got rid of all of my incomes. I sat down with my family and said to them, like, if this doesn't work, then I might be moving in with you again, you know, and just put everything on the line. And luckily, I think the energy and the time and everything just worked out for us.
And how do you attribute that to anything in particular? Was there a secret to your success on Kickstarter?
I think like many things build success on Kickstarter. It's not a platform where you can just tick one box and hope it's going to work. But for me, I guess one of the biggest things is openness and honestness. You know, I feel like I opened myself up to the world and I let them ask anything. I let them do anything. I spoke from my heart and I just explained everything. You know, I talked. I wasn't afraid to say, you know, I don't know, or at least always gave an answer. And I think for me, like every comment we got, I responded to. Every tweet I responded to, every Facebook post. And literally I alternated on tabs, you know, search Facebook for people talking about the game, search Board Game Geek for people talking about the game, search Twitter, and just got involved and kind of helped answer those questions because people want someone they believe, you know, someone that they can have a friendship with. And for me, I think that helped me connect with people, which potentially helped the game kind of grow more.
It kind of sounds like you're the kind of the ideal that Kickstarter had in mind when it started, right? You had a big idea, you went to the people and said, hey, do you want to do this with me? And they said, how did the Kickstarter do? Yeah,
so the first Kickstarter raised £280,000, which is around $350,000.
And were you like over the moon at that?
I mean, it's funny because I never went to conventions. You know, a lot of people say if you want to make a game, you have to go to conventions, you have to show the world. And for me, yes, you have to play test it, and we play tested it with countless people, but we never did the convention scene. We never went out there. And what that means is it was hard to know, right? You had no idea what was going to happen. And the day we press live, like go live, was so daunting because one part of you sits there and goes, I believe, you know, and one part of you sits there and goes, what happens if no one comes along, right? Like you're going to get your 2 or 3 friends who always come along, but what happens? And we ended up funding within like 3 hours, and it was just like, it literally was the most amazing thing, because I had a checklist of everything I wanted to do. It was about 100 things from, send newsletter, update website, put it on Twitter, do this, do that. And by the time I got to the end of the list, we had funded. And it was just, so I didn't even know,
You got to the
I was
end
just
of your marketing checklist and you had already done it all.
Yeah, and it was surreal. It was an amazing experience.
Well, let's see what the Kickstarter created here. So this is City of Kings, and this is the base game, right? It's about $95 at retail.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So what is City of Kings? Why this game?
Cool. So this is kind of some of the pieces out, just to kind of give us a bit of an overview. So it's really an open adventure based RPG with a very puzzly heart. So this is all about kind of encountering things and working out how to use them to deal with situations. At the start of the game, you're going to choose a story or a scenario, which is basically going to give you some setup instructions on how to play and how to set up the board. You're going to choose different map tiles, so there's lots of different ones. And when you set up the game, these are all going to be turned over face down. So they're going to be shuffled out, and they're all going to be just unknown places.
So just unknown areas of the world. Right?
So this is designed to give you this feeling of you explore out, and as you turn over the tiles, you start to discover what is there. You might find like a lake or a mine or a forest where you can gather resources. You might find a shop where you can trade for equipment. You might find a quest location where people ask you for help and give you quests. And again, you can help them or ignore them, or you find creatures. And one of the things that's really unique in this game is when you find a creature, you'll take one of the creature templates from the game, you'll take the matching kind of war banner, and then you'll put it onto the board. And now this represents the creature, and this represents their kind of statistics. You'll take a stat bar, and there's about 100 different stat bars split across the player counts.
Wow.
And depending again on the story, defines which one you start on. So you turn this over, and this would tell you the basic stats that this character has. So for example, it has 3 health, it heals for 1, it attacks for 1, it has a range of 2, and a few other bits as well.
Nice.
So the cool thing is that it has abilities. So this has a little green circle, and you can see on the board here there's another green circle. So this means you're going to go to this green bag and you're going to take out 2 ability tokens. So these 3 bags, so there's a green, an orange and a red, are 3 different difficulties, and as you progress through the game you get more and more different types of combinations, and they're going to tell you that this creature has the ability knockback and it has the ability grab. So actually this creature has 2 abilities that kind of counter themselves, but you might get ones where it spreads fire or poison or teleports and
so you're randomly generating a monster, essentially.
And then that monster is just going to stay on the board, and it's up to you when you fight it. It might move around, it might not. You know how far it can reach, you know how much damage it can do. So now as a team, you have to work out how do you overcome that. Maybe you're going to go over to the mine and get some ore and trade that for some equipment cards. So as you get the equipment cards, you're going to get these, and they're going to go onto your character sheet, and they're going to have different costs, and they're going to give you different stat increases. Or perhaps you're going to go and do some side quests, and again the side quests are going to give you different stories, and these are all going to tell you,
it's a lot of story there.
Yep.
Actually, that's incredible.
So there's about kind of 30 to 40,000 words of narrative across the entire game. So like all of these story cards, again, just tell a huge story of kind of what's going on and what's happening.
And this is a cooperative experience, so up to 4 players?
Exactly. So it's 1 to 4 players. In the 1 player, you do control 2 characters, so it's kind of multi-handed. But effectively, as I say, you're kind of exploring, you're fighting these creatures, and some of these creatures might be on the board for half an hour whilst you kind of ignore them.
Yeah.
And once this happens, you level up. As it's a fully cooperative game, when you kill things or complete quests, you all share the XP. So there's 1 XP bar, and it means that all of you are going to level up at the same time.
Very nice.
And this is one of the cool things, because in many games you have downtime where people are thinking about stuff. And one of those decisions is often, how am I going to customize my character or do my character? So if you all level up at the same time, you all gain the bonuses at the same time, which means as a team I can say, what are we going to do? Do you want to attack? Do you want to be a healer? Do you want to be the person who focuses on resources? And then we can increase our characters.
And it's kind of a nice breath of, a deep breath to zoom out of the action for a second. Everybody focuses on the technical pieces and back into the world.
Exactly. Right? Because fundamentally, it's a very puzzly game, and it's very deterministic. You always know what things can do and how they're going to work. So it's up to you to kind of sit there and think, what are our goals? And as you can see with your character sheets, you've got a lot of different options. So you've got things like health and attack and heal, which obviously is how much health you've got, how much damage you do, and how much health you can restore in an action. You've got things like range and move, which is how far you can reach or how quickly you move. Wow. So again, you may want to focus on lots of range and lots of attack and be more like an archer. Or maybe you want to be really fast and you run around really quickly, but you have to be really close to creatures. And that might depend on the type of creatures you find or what you're going to do, but you really kind of specialize your character.
Yeah, it's very cool. It makes a lot of sense that you would kind of build it this way where players can work together. Because I'm just thinking, like, if random encounters pop up that now require somebody to, be at a great range or risk, certain death, then we need to decide who's going to be that person who's now going to turn into the archer, so we can deal with this challenge.
And it's very much from video terms around the kind of the Holy Trinity. So the concept of needing someone to focus on attacking, someone to focus on healing, and someone to focus on tanking or absorbing the damage.
Yeah.
So as a team, you have to work out how are we going to do those roles. So perhaps Earthshaker here is going to be the person taking the damage, and then Talora can come in and attack. Yeah. Or perhaps Talora is going to just stay here and heal Earthshaker whilst Earthshaker takes the damage and attacks the creature.
Yeah.
So it's got a big kind of positional element to it as well.
Now I noticed there's also it seems like there's a secondary game going on where there's resources. I see fish and axes and all sorts of things. Exactly. So are there workers involved as well?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about this is I'm a big fan of MMORPGs, and a big part of that is having professions. So it's kind of gathering resources and doing that. And everyone loves the concept of an MMORPG where you have to go fishing, because fishing has to be in a game, right?
Gather 20,000 furs to get a new mount.
Exactly.
I understand.
So
I played that game before.
So each character will start with one worker on the board, and as well as being able to move your character around, you can move your worker around. And your workers can effectively do several things. One of them is they can go to resource locations, and when they get there, they will be able to gather fish or wood. There's also other ones which come later in the game, and those resources are collected based on how skilled up you are in that action. You also have scavenging, so anywhere where you find a creature and the creature has been killed, you can then search that location for resources as well. So in that instance, you're not finding a specific resource, you're just finding something.
Getting some loot of some kind, yeah.
And then you can use that worker to also then go and build structures and repair damage on the board. So there are some tiles which allow you to actually build them up and to build strongholds and forts onto the board as well.
So, first of all, I'm getting excited about this. Spoiler alert. Can you essentially just kind of choose to level up your resource game and not even do much of the fighting?
Yep. So one of the cool things about this, and even more so with 4 players, with less than 4 players, it becomes a little bit more, you need to kind of multitask more. But with 4 players, if you have one person and all they want to do is gather resources and focus on that, they can do. And the consequence of that is you can buy more equipment because you've got more resources to trade for equipment, which means maybe you only have 3 people for the battles, but they're 3 people who are much stronger and much more powerful, and they counter the fact that the 4th person's not in the battle.
Wow.
So it really gives you that option of, if you want to do worker stuff, or if someone in your group wants to do that, you can. And the game's really designed about allowing people to play how they want to play. So for example, I said to you earlier, when you attack, you've got your attack damage. So if I have an attack of 3, if I attack a creature, I'm going to do 3 damage. I know that. Again, if I have a heal of 4 and I want to heal you for 4, then I can do that.
You do it, yeah.
However, if you're a crazy person and you like randomness and not knowing what you're doing, you can increase your luck stat. And if you increase your luck stat, now when I attack, I'm going to be rolling dice. And that will give me random damage modifiers. So I can customize into being a dice rolling player. Or if I hate dice, I never have to touch them.
So how do you, did you start with, or I guess get to kind of the pinnacle of this game and say, I need to start stripping things back because it's trying to do too much?
Yeah.
Because somehow, you've managed to serve every potential type of player, but it doesn't feel terribly heavy. If I want to be the researcher, I know those people, by the way, I have those friends. It's I want to mine stuff and just make gear for everybody. Or the guy, I really enjoy the thrill of rolling dice and I want to be the lucky person. Getting all of that in the same system that's already doing a lot of this stuff is pretty difficult without it being super clunky. So was it ever like more complex than it is now?
For sure. And I mean, for me, as I've said, I come from a video game background. So I'm one of these people who, my main character from World of Warcraft had 400 days of play. You know, I spent a lot of my lifetime playing these games. And you can put all of these things into games if you understand the harmony between them and how they can interact with each other. So I started with much, much more. I mean, the original version of the game, the very first version we played, took about 14 hours to play. So now we've cut that right down, and it takes, depending on the mode, 45 minutes to 3 hours. So you can play a 90-minute game, or you can play a 3-hour game, and that's an option.
Super impressive cutting there.
It was a huge cut down, and there was lots of things that we had to change. So a good example of that is resources. And, when you go to the forest, you get wood. And I really like the idea of, in the harder locations, like the ender, further away stuff, maybe when you go to a forest there, you get more wood, but there's more dangers. And that kind of level of, the further you go out, the more you can get, the more reward, because there's more stuff, but there's more risk. But that was the kind of thing where actually it was an extra complicated rule, and it didn't really add to the game, because we found most of the time by people that had gone out there, they'd already collected all the wood they needed to collect, because they used that to get there.
Yeah, all the way out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's lots of layers that we strip back to kind of refine what are the things people are doing in the game versus what are the things that we want in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we should mention also, because this is what struck me a little bit too when we were going around. So there are miniature versions of these pop-ups. Now, is this is like an expansion, right? That happened.
It is. So we wanted to make sure that the base game was an affordable game, and also, there's a huge game. There's a lot in the box. It weighs about 10 pounds in physical weight, so it's a very, very heavy game. So one of the things I wanted to make sure was, if you buy the game, you get the experience. And if you want the extras, such as the miniatures, then you can buy the miniatures. So other examples of that is like this black plastic tray here. That is not in the base game, but if you want to have the tray to store the pieces, you can buy that as an extra.
Yeah.
So it's really about, how do I improve the world and the game to be what I want as a player? If I don't have huge amounts of money, I can still have the whole game. I'm not missing out.
Yeah.
But if I want miniatures, if I want wooden tokens, if I want plastic trays, those options are all there and allow me to kind of upgrade as I can.
So when did you fulfill your Kickstarters? How new is this ultimately?
The first Kickstarter launched in 2017 and shipped at the start of 2018. However, at the start of 2018, literally that Kickstarter sold out within 3 days. We were completely out of stock. And it was just, because it's such a big game, it's incredibly expensive to produce. And, we just didn't have it. So we never got into retail or distribution like we did in the UK, but nowhere else, because we just sold out so quickly.
Yeah.
So then we did the expansions, and then we did a second Kickstarter for those. And with that, we obviously did a reprint for the game. So that happened at the start of 2018, and that started shipping at the start of 2019. So basically, we finished shipping the game in February this year, and it's now early March. And at the end of February, we released and retailed distribution worldwide. So the game's now available in 17 countries, and it's kind of widely out there. So it's, in many ways, it's completely new, because this is the first time you can go out into a shop and buy the game. But obviously, some people who backed that first Kickstarter have had the game for a while.
Yeah. So what's it like going from, your first Kickstarter, you get the product. First of all, it sounds like you actually ran the Kickstarter well, right? Because you fulfilled on time.
Yeah, we were about 50% of the people got it on time, and 50% of the people about a week late. So,
that's not bad.
Which is close, right?
In terms of all the Kickstarter stories that I've heard, you are on your game on that one. But then going from that to getting what I have to imagine is a sense of almost legitimacy to be in distribution and to get your game in the hands of so many more people. What was that experience like for you?
It's amazing. And it's one of those things where distribution is like the holy grail, right? And there's people out there who say, oh, well, I'm going to do a Kickstarter. I'm going to try and make millions on it. And that's all well and good, And if you do a Kickstarter and you make 4 or 5 million off that Kickstarter, maybe that's your life, Maybe you're done now. But for me, I want to make the games that I enjoy making. I want it to be my livelihood, and I want it to be a business. And for that to happen, you can't just have one-hit wonders that kind of come out, they make some money, and you move on. Because at that point, are you selling it because of the artwork, because of the concept, because I have a nice smile? Or are you selling it because people enjoy it? And distribution for me has kind of pushed us into that. People enjoy it, people want it, people believe the game is enjoyable enough to warrant selling it in stores and taking up valuable space.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's an amazing feeling. Like, it's really, really nice.
So compared to a lot of, especially extremely independent publishers that go to Kickstarter, you seem to have a very long view of what City of Games is ultimately going to represent, right? So what is that vision? What's next?
So for me, so many people see the City of Kings as this board game. And for me, I kind of see it for Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or Warcraft. None of those things are one particular object. You know, it's not one movie. It's not one game. It's a whole series. And for me, I want to expand on the City of Kings universe. So it's about building more games in the same universe that tell more stories. So it's not about building necessarily more expansions and more contents on this, although we will do that. It's about, how do I tell more stories? So for example, in this world, at this point in time, the world's being destroyed. The last remaining heroes have retreated to the city, and it's that moment where it's like, we either have to go out and we fight and we hope that we can survive, or we give up. So that's really cool and interesting. But Rising Blades, which is the next game we're working on for kind of next year, that is about, you're the bad guys, and it's the day you go out and destroy the world. So the ultimate kind of warlord has said, I need a chief of command, prove yourself. So that's a competitive game set 50 years before this, where you're the ones who destroy that world. So it's got an overlap in narrative, and it helps you build the world, but it's a competitive game. It's a very different game in terms of how it plays.
Yeah, and would you call all of that kind of the City of Kings universe, right?
Exactly.
So we went to see a City of Kings role-playing game, or a City of Kings trilogy of books, or, you know, a City of Kings movie series,
and
right?
Those are all things which I would love to do, you know, and obviously one day down the line, but for now, perhaps, you know, the games are kind of the core, and I want to keep it to board games. Whilst back in the day, I always dreamed of doing video games, I've become kind of understanding that board games can do wonderful things as well. And there's so much innovation, and there's so much that you can just discover in what can be done with cardboard these days, and plastic, and, you know, just miniatures, and kind of all of these things that excites me. You know, that excites me as much as what can we put on a screen. So like, just board games, more of these in this world, and just kind of growing it.
I wonder, was there like a defining moment for you whenever you were in the middle of kind of the board game sphere, and maybe you had started to get your feet wet, or you went to your first convention or something, where it really struck you how magical and different the tabletop gaming world is from something like a World of Warcraft?
I think it's one of those things where it kind of grew a bit over time. So I do remember sitting kind of at home and thinking to myself, you know, there's cooperative games now. You know, there's games that have big, complicated character sheets. There's games that have difficulties. You know, like in a video game, do you want to play on easy, medium, and hard? There's board games that do that. There's board games that have timers. There's board games that have legacy components that physically change. And it kind of was just like this realization of all of these different things actually exist in some form, that it started to tick the boxes for all of those video game mechanics that I wanted to try and put into the board.
Yeah, so I have to imagine that there's probably a number of people watching you right now that are you right before you started designing this game, right? And thinking, am I going to do this? Is it worth it for me to do this? Can you give any tips or advice to people who are thinking about self-publishing and being an independent publisher like you?
I think the most important thing to do, and it's something which no one does who's new, and I understand it. I didn't do it the first time. And it's one of those things where it's not the end of the world, but it's get your game in front of other people. For me, the City of Kings was something that me and Sarah, my girlfriend, worked on for a year before we started playing it with other people. And as soon as we did that, we started to learn things and change things. And so many people put so much of their life into something, and they're afraid that someone's going to say it's bad. They're afraid someone's going to say it's terrible. Yeah. So with Rising Blades, something that I did for that was I came up with the main mechanic I wanted in that game. And I literally, within 3 hours of coming up with that game, sat down and played it with a group of people. And every day for that first week, I sat down with different groups of people just to hammer out, how does this work? How does it make sense? And no one cared that there wasn't a game. No one cared you can play and enjoy it.
Yeah.
No one said, oh my God, you drew that by your hand and it looks ridiculous, or it's a piece of paper, I can't pick it up, because they knew it wasn't finished. They understood the purpose of that moment was to improve it and to make it something people would enjoy. And I think that people who are new, they really have to understand that it's better to get it in front of people when it's brand new than when it's a year old, because you're always going to find mistakes, but a year later it hurts so much more because you believe you've done the right thing, but actually a year ago maybe someone told you they hadn't.
Frank, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's absolutely fine.
Really appreciate it. So anybody who wants to find out more about this game, what you're up to, follow you. I know you have a live stream. Let the folks know where they might find you.
So the absolute best place to go would be www.thecityofkings.com. So that's our main website that has links to Twitter and Facebook. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook as City of Games HQ. But we're very active on all the social channels, so that's the best place to go.
City of Games on our keep an eye on and continue to investigate list. I might just have to pick up a copy of this. I'm going to be honest with you, Frank. Thank you guys so very much for watching. Until next time, keep playing.